Hey, Mike.
Hey, Carl.
10 o'clock.
10
Don't forget to
o'clock.
record.
Here we go. We're going live.
All right.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Multifamily Unplugged, the number one Saturday morning radio show where real estate investors, brokers, and property managers get their fill. We dive into raw, unscripted conversation about multifamily real estate, property management, and the current events that affect your business every day. Hey, some topics that really need a lot of conversation and straight factual data. You know, real estate can be such a spur of the moment decision making process that it's really important to stay on top of things. You know, that's why we come here on Saturday morning, no script, raw, we're going to be spontaneous. So let me take a minute. I'm Mike. I'm with My Core Intentions, and I'm joined by my co host this morning, C. Gordon Moose, who we proudly call Moose, your focus guy. Hey, Carl, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Mike. How are you?
I'm great. It's good to see you. How's everything in your side of the city?
Everything's good. Everything's good. It's a beautiful day, and we're kicking off here and then go enjoy the rest of it with my family.
So, Carl, here, I think I mentioned this last week, but this is my new banter moving forward for 2021. And it is to live a ridiculous life. So, to live life at the fullest, play all out, go for the gusto. I used to say, hey, go big or go home, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but, live a ridiculous life, man. Enjoy every minute.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you get to a certain point, Mike, and I think we're at that point where there's no reason not to, right? It's just, there's really no reason not to.
yeah. Hey, you might want to get a little closer to your mic. You got a little echo going on there this morning.
Oh, I do?
Yeah, there you are. Perfect. That's good. There you are.
Okay.
All right. So listen, if you've been thinking about what you're going to do next year, and you're starting the goal setting process and planning, you still have a few weeks left here in 2020 to work through that process. I would invite you on Monday night, my meetup groups. We have been talking about goal setting and planning the last couple of weeks. This week, we're going to dive in a little bit deeper and help people stay a little bit focused. But here's really what I want people to know. On December 7th, it's a Monday night, and Carl, I hope you're coming to this. We're going to play cash flow. And if anybody plays cash flow on a board game but hasn't played it virtually, you're going to want to be there for this. I know that at the summit, the people who played cash flow had a great experience, really enjoyed it. The feedback was wonderful. So Michael Zhao will be moderating that again, and it'll be a heck of a lot of fun. So that'll be 7 o'clock. Let me know. You can put it in the chat if you want to be there. We'll make sure you get an invite for that. Or if you're part of my meetup group on Monday night, you'll see the invite come through for that. So the other thing is Exit Plan, my book I just put out. If you are looking for a good read this weekend, you might want to go to Amazon, pick that up, or you can download a free copy off of the website. Just go to My Core Intentions, go to the ebook version, and put in my name in the coupon, Mike, and you'll be able to get a free copy for yourself. So enjoy that, because I know that when we talk about exit planning, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the show this morning, we talk about not just getting out of a deal, but other strategies and other structures that you can do. So we'll cover a little bit more of that later on in the show this morning. All right, Carl, you got anything for us this morning?
Well, no, you and I were just talking about, you know, what people are dealing with right now, being at home and not being able to go out and socialize or go to events. You and I are really big networkers. So, for me, it's been, I don't want to use the word struggle, but it's been an adjustment, not being able to go to two or three or four networking events every week, which was what I was doing. I mean, that's what I've been doing for a long time. I mean, that's how I get to, you get to know people get to like you, and you see familiar faces and you see new faces. So, it's just been a really kind of an interesting time. And, the question that you and I had for each other was, how do you stay focused, right? And how do you maintain, with it, maintain that even strain, right? Just keep chugging at it, keep going at it, keep chipping away, knowing that this is going to come to an end, right? I mean, and that, we're probably closer to the end of this situation than we are to the beginning. And, I'm sure that people that are listening can relate to that too, because, we're all going through this, and it's a global thing. I have friends in Switzerland, friends in Germany, friends in Holland, England, and I asked the guy in London. I said, "How are things there?" And he pretty much described exactly what we're going through here in Chicago. I mean, as if he was like talking about Chicago.
Yeah.
So, this is a global thing, and some people are going to lose it, and some people are going to just stay even keel, and there are some people that are going to take this opportunity and really grow from it, and that's just that's something that you and I just touched on briefly.
Yeah. So the article that I pulled up that we were talking about before the show started, and hey, I want everybody to know that we're live on Facebook this morning and on Zoom. So we have people on both platforms, which is kind of interesting here this morning. So if you have comments, if you have questions, drop them in the chat on either platform, and we'll get those addressed for you. So the article that I pulled, Carl, was finding the struggle in working at home. So people are finding it a struggle to be working at home and being still part of this whole pandemic and being locked up. And I like what you said about, hey, your friends in Norway and Sweden and around the world are also seeing these struggles. It's not just us locally or in the city of Chicago or nationally or domestically here, right?
Right.
But it's worldwide. And I think we can look at this as two ways. We could look at this as a problem or a challenge, and that, what are we going to do? Or we could say, hey, it's an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity to change. You know, Nothing is constant in life except change itself, right? And unless we're willing to change and take something new on or do something different, we're going to stay in the same old place. And there's no growth in that, which is part of the issue.
Yeah.
So, one of the things is, what can you do different today? What can you do different than you've done in the past to network? You said it. You and I are big networkers. We used to go to all kinds of events. We'd spend time out meeting people, getting to know people. How do you do that online today? Hey, you know what? Reach out on LinkedIn or Facebook. Pick somebody out, start a conversation with them, and meet them. That's what we have to do today to build those new relationships.
Yeah. One of the things I did was, if you're not familiar with Meetup, Meetup is a great platform. I started a couple groups. I think I've got about 600 people in my groups, and it's around the Think and Grow Rich, because that's the foundation of my program, your Find Your Focus program, and that's a great way. And again, I started those probably a year and a half ago, when the idea was once a month we would get together in person, at a place, and have a conversation, and you can bring people together. And then it morphed into doing Zoom calls, because obviously we weren't going to be meeting, so everybody's now doing it on Zoom. So, um, you know, take the initiative. I mean, if there's something that you're not finding out there, and it's something that's important to you, create it yourself. You know what I mean? If you want to network with people, and you can't find a group that's doing the type of networking that you want to do, or based around the hobby or the topic or whatever it may be, create it yourself. Go to Meetup, and it's really simple to start a group. It's a free service. I think you can start up to 3 groups. I know, Mike, you've got a couple of groups. It's a great way to just put yourself out there. People can join from all over the world, literally. And it's a great way to start to connect with people. And if you've never been on there, go play around. I mean, they've got meetup groups for all kinds of things, all kinds of different things. I mean, yours and mine, Mike, are basically around our programs, so real estate and focus. Mine around focus, yours around real estate. However, take the initiative, and like you said, Mike, people are going to look at this as a downer and a bummer, or they're going to look at it as an opportunity to personally grow and to reinvent themselves and recreate or create something that may not have existed before that they want to bring into existence. And I think that's a really good thing. And then the other point I want to make that you made, you're not in this alone. A lot of times when we're cooped up or we're isolated, we get the feeling that we're in this alone and it's happening to us, right? And nobody else is experiencing this. And the reality is that we're all going through this together as a human, as a species, as a human race. We're all going through this together. So
Right.
you're not alone, and that sometimes makes people feel a little bit better. It doesn't improve the situation per se, but however, it makes them feel better about the situation because they know, that everybody else is going through this in their own way, and that sometimes gets people over the hump.
Yeah, that's a big deal to know that you're not in this alone. And hey, if you're stuck or you need something, reach out, right? But here's the thing: keep showing up, keep showing up for life, keep showing up for what you're doing, and things will change. Even if uh, and keep showing up for what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to do. This whole call is about multifamily, right? Multifamily investing and building a property management arm. And how do we do that? How do we get out? Well, you got to keep showing up, right? Even when nobody else believes in you or nobody else cares what you're doing, keep showing up. Don't quit.
Yeah.
You've got to have that confidence in yourself to move forward, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, Mike. One of the chapters in Think and Grow Rich is called persistence. And Andrew Carnegie said persistence is to a person's character what carbon is to steel. And he knew a little bit about steel and he knew a little bit about character. And the more carbon you put into steel, the stronger it is. The more persistence you put into your character, the stronger it is. And so, showing up is more than half the battle. No doubt about that. And focusing in on what you want. And we talk about multifamily, and this show is about multifamily. That's the nuts and bolts, right? The nuts and bolts about how to build something.
Right.
However, you and I both know that mindset is so critical, and having a positive, constructive mindset. And in times when you're isolated, or in times like this when you know, when the universe moves our cheese, right? Who moved our cheese? We no longer can go to those networking events the way we used to do that, right? That's when you really want to strengthen your mindset and understand this is going to pass. This is a situation that none of us have control over directly, right?
Right.
And just keeping your mindset positive, whatever it is, however you do that on a daily basis, it's very, very important. And there's some very easy techniques to do it. Positive affirmations, having a good support network, reading. Don't doing um, uh, uh, constructive activities, right? As opposed to just surfing the net. Grab that book that you've never read before. Grab Mike's book, read Mike's book. Grab a book that's gonna increase your knowledge about something, right? Or if you always wanted to do something, that you didn't find the time to do, find it time, do it now because you've got the time to do it. Spend more time with family. If you have kids or you have a family that you're there, play board games or just do something with your family, and that's an opportunity to do something positive, constructive.
Speaking of board games, that's cash flow on December 7th. We're
There
gonna
you go.
play, Hey, listen. Here's what I really, you mentioned this. You said, "Hey, this is about multifamily. It's multifamily unplugged on Saturday morning." Here's what I want to talk about: exit plan. Not my book, but what I want to do is I want to create a boot camp for people to come to where they can learn in depth, really deep, where I can drill down. And what I want to know right now is for some people to put some things in the chat about what that would look like for them. What would be some really good knowledge that they could sink their teeth in. So put some comments into the chat. But hey Carl, listen, I came up with a list of like 30 different things, and I don't think that all of them are uh, relevant. But what I do think is that the ones that become relevant, we need to talk about and drill down into a little bit. So I don't think you're opposed to me going through some of these things and
No, absolutely. Well, no,
having
this
a
is
little conversation.
listen. I've said it before. This is a very important part of any investment strategies, particularly if you're looking at multifamily. You want to start with the end in mind. You really want to understand what is your exit. So I think this is totally appropriate.
I said that to somebody yesterday. I said I was on a podcast yesterday. Uh, this Brian Briscoe, he's a yeah, actually he's in the service, works at the Pentagon, and he does a apartment podcast. And we had a great call yesterday. His format's really interesting because he has an experienced guy on, and then he has a new guy on. And so he asks me a series of questions to get some of that knowledge out. Then he asks the newer investor some questions, and then the newer investor asks me some questions. The format was really cool, but that was really big part of the conversation was the exit plan, right? And keeping the end in mind. And I talked about Covey. So I said, this is the point of this story. So I talked about Covey and I said, hey, Stephen Covey wrote a book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And how do, and chapter 2 in there is keeping the end in mind. And we got a little further in the conversation, and Brian says, well, I think chapter 6 or 7 is win-win. And what was funny is that's how the whole conversation went. The whole conversation went, how do we create a win-win situation for the broker, the seller, the investor, everybody who's involved in the deal, right? Because listen, nothing happens until there's a phone call made by somebody figuring out if somebody wants to sell a property, right? So somebody told me a long time ago, and Carl, I'm an old prospector, right, from way back when, that I made 20,000 phone calls, dials a year to sell 125 listings, right? So, but somebody told me, an attorney said to me one day, he said, hey, do you realize how many people you put to work just because you picked the phone up and dialed the phone? And we started writing a list of people. It was crazy. It was everybody from the people at AT&T who put the phone line in to the closer at the title company by the time the deal closes. But it's just kind of an interesting conversation. So think about all the people that you help keep employed because of your job function as being an investor in the marketplace and going out and finding a off market deal.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's done my Think and Grow Rich course, and he and his wife are looking at getting into multifamily. And it's all about action, right? I mean that is one of the key things in what you were just pointing to, what you were just talking about is nothing happens until you take action. You pick up the phone, you get beyond your fear, right? Your fear of criticism, your fear of your fear of judgment, your fear of poverty, right? You get beyond those fears, you pick up the phone, you start dialing. And the more you use that muscle, the better you get at it, right? And you're going to make mistakes. There's no doubt. For those of you that are just starting out, you're going to make mistakes, and that's part of learning, right? That's failure and defeat are two different things. Failure is a temporary thing. That is the first step in success. If you're afraid to fail, you're never going to succeed. So taking that action, connecting with people that have done it before, because as you always say, Mike, success leaves clues, right? So connect with somebody that knows what they're doing, so they can help you through that, and then be willing to pick up the phone or take that action, whatever it is. Be willing to stumble, right, and fail. They call that failure, and to keep moving forward. And the difference between defeat is a decision. When you're defeated, you've decided to quit. There's a difference between failing and defeat, right? Failure is the first step of success. Defeat is a decision, right? You decide to quit. So, like you said, you made 20,000 calls, but I'm sure the first 100 didn't go the same way the last 100 went, because by the time you're on the last 100, you had a rhythm, you had your spiel down,
Yeah.
and so you kept going. You were persistent, right? And look at what kind of success you drew from that. And you're right, it affected not only you, it affected many, many, many untold people.
Yeah, for sure. So, so when you talk about doing a multifamily deal and you are getting into the business and not just becoming a new investor, but making a transition. Maybe you're already in the single family space, maybe you're in some other asset class, or and you're trying to make a transition into larger properties, more on the commercial side. I think there's some things that you need to start to look at and pay attention to as you get into this before you even start planning that exit strategy, right? And those things start with figuring out your why you're in the business, why you're doing what you're doing, and once you get clarity on what that is and what you're trying to achieve, and I don't mean just, hey, Carl, I'm trying to make extra money this year, you know, or, um, uh, you know, uh, but being crystal clear on what the outcome is going to be, right? And then set some goals, and then understanding that success is a journey, it's not a destination. So, I said earlier, keep showing up, right? Because we don't accomplish things like that. It takes time, and over time, we got to keep showing up. Because if you stop showing up, you're never going to know if you failed. You're just not. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, and that's what most people, most people do. They reach a certain level and they run into some adversity, right? And they get tripped up and then they decide to quit, right? And one of the things I tell people is exactly what you're talking about, Mike. Really defining what your why is and really getting to that emotional why, why you're doing this. And then get something in your physical space, whether it's a picture or something to constantly remind you of why you're doing it, right? And I've got my little trinkets and my little things that remind me, of what it is that I want in my life, right? And they're constant reminders so that when I do start to stumble, or when I do start to get discouraged, right, or when I do, get no, or it's not working out exactly the way I have it planned, I can refresh my memory and I can look at these physical reminders of why I'm doing this, and that will get you charged up again. So whatever it is for you, that the reason why you're doing this, and like you said, get to that emotional why, and then figure out or find some things that you can put in your physical world to actually remind you, right? Like if you ever meet me, I have a stone. I always have a stone with me. It's my gratitude stone, right? Lee Brower from The Secret, who's a friend of ours, talked to me about that before The Secret ever came out. It reminds me, I always have it with me. It's a physical reminder about why I do what I'm doing. And for me, I always have it with me. So, you know, figure that out. And I suggest put something in your physical world so that you can constantly be reminded of why you're doing what you're doing, and that will sometimes help you get over those humps.
For sure. For sure. So I think when we start walking down the road of exit planning, in order to get out, we need to know what we're getting into. And I think one of the first things that we need to look at, and always tell a couple of stories of going out and looking at a property and taking that first glance and the broker offering and going back and sitting at a coffee shop and penciling out what I think, right? I think that's the beginning of that exit plan. So, uh, the example I use a deal that I looked at in Dallas one time. It was like 287 units, and it had about a 15% vacancy factor, and that was a physical vacancy factor. So I knew that there was 48 empty apartments, but the economic vacancy factor was was 26% overall. So that means that not only did I physically not having people living there and places were empty, but I also had people living there that weren't paying rent. And yeah, there were a couple of model apartments, and the maintenance guy had an apartment, but but people living there not paying rent. So there was obviously some issues. So this 287 unit deal had 74 empty apartments. So when you look at that, you have to go, now most guys are run away from that, right? But I smell opportunity and I think, geez, how do we change this around? How do we tenant it? How do we raise the rents? How do we improve it? You know, went and penciled it out. It looked like $1 million worth of upgrades just to get it to a point where it would be operational. So, when you look at a deal like that, can you figure out what the back is going to look like? So, here's one thing you need to look at. Okay, it's nice to say, hey, I can raise the rent $50 a unit, and I can do that across the board on 100 units. But if the market won't substantiate the rent increase because the job growth isn't there, or the population growth isn't there, or because you're in a bad school district, those are the things that'll hold you back, right? So unless you figure out how to work within that, it's probably not going to work at all, and it's probably not a deal to go after. So those beginning things to look at. That's why I say don't ever get married to a deal, right? Because as soon as you get married and you're emotionally involved, it throws all the rationale out the window.
Yeah, and I used to tell people that too when I was a banker. When we'd have to say, we're not going to take this to committee because we don't think it's a good deal. People would sometimes come up with every reason. Oh, you don't understand. It's a historic building and it's in a great area and blah blah blah. Because you could tell they were emotionally attached.
Right.
And as a banker, we would say, well, you're asking us to put 60 or 70% of our money into this, and we don't think it's good risk. So you should be thanking me for telling you because we have no emotional attachment. It's just we know what the numbers say, and we know what the we're what the market's going. And the bank had a very clear exit strategy. The bank said, in 5 years we want to either refinance this or we want to be paid off. So yeah, I think you're right on the head, Mike. Really understanding what your exit strategy is, and then when you look at a property, make sure you're looking at it from that perspective so that it fits your exit strategy, as opposed to you constantly trying to manipulate your exit strategy for the deal that you're looking at, because every deal is going to look different, and you want to find the ones that fit your exit plan, your exit strategy, because otherwise you're going to be all over the map. And I think you would agree with that, right?
Yeah, for sure. And when you look at the end in mind, you have to walk into it and say, okay, what do I want to accomplish here? If I could, what would I like to accomplish here? So is that a 20% return on my investment? Is that a, 12% cash on cash return on an annual basis? What am I trying to accomplish? If I run a deal analysis and I run that out for 10 years, okay, and I say that, all right, so if I buy this deal on January 1st of 2021 and I hold it till January 1st of 2031, does that mean that's when I'm going to sell out of it? I don't know. When I run a 10-year, I can look at it and say, geez, my sweet spot is at 7 years. This is when I need to exit. Okay, so now when I talk about exit, is I don't necessarily always mean, hey, I'm going to sell and I'm going to give up control, because it doesn't necessarily always mean giving up control. It can mean, hey, I'm going to bring another partner in. I'm going to recapitalize this property. What can I do at that spot where I've maximized it? Because if I say that in 7 years I've maximized my return, what if I ran that same analysis from that point for another 10 years like I bought it? Would I see that type of a gain again? So those are the things that you want to look for, and you want to see where the opportunity lies. A lot of times people say, well, how do I find information out? Well, walk into the village hall, go to the city, see the economic development department, or see the planning department. They should have a 10 to 20 year vision or a map of where the city's going to go. what they want to accomplish, they'll know what they're trying to attract to town as far as big business, you know, maybe a Walmart or a factory or something that's going to increase the visibility of the city, the town, the population, things like that, right?
Yep. So, Mike, you brought up a good point. So, when you did your analysis, and you were dealing with much bigger properties than I would. I think the biggest property we ever had was about 28 or 30 units, maybe 32. I can't remember offhand. But you were dealing with much larger assets, which is awesome. That's great. Um, and you talked about having a 10-year strategy. However, looking at different scenarios, right? Like maybe 5 years, right? Maybe 7 years, and just kind of looking into your crystal ball, which none of us have, absolutely. However, you do make some assumptions, and then you project out and say, well, what happens in 5 years? What happens in 7 years? So, um, that was part of your strategy, right? I mean, how would you advise somebody, that maybe you were training or coaching with regard to that? Like, how do you do your predictive models?
Well, I think the first thing you need to do is you need to see where you're at. You got to take a look at the different things right now. So you have to evaluate schools. Are the schools good, and where are they going? I think evaluate a school today in the midst of kids being at home, studying online, going to school online is different than it was a year ago when kids were physically in school. I think you're going to see a shift in report cards. I think you're going to see a shift in the grading system of the school systems. That's a whole nother conversation, right? But
Right.
you have to be aware of that. So something that might have been a really good school district might not be as good of a school district going forward right now. We're going to have to wait and see. The other things you want to look at are population. Is the population going up, or is it sitting flat? Because I'm of the belief that if it's sitting flat, it's not sitting flat, it's moving backwards. You're either going two ways, forwards or backwards. So you're either making progress or you're not. There is no stagnant, stuck. It's either or. So you want to look at population. Is it on the rise or is it on the decline? And who's in that population? So now you want to start to drill down into the demographics. You want to look at um, who makes up the workforce and who's going to live. I can't. I always bought workforce housing, so that was that B class product, right? It didn't hit the management of corporations, but it was the workers who lived in those properties, and they always need a place to live. So that B class product is a good product to be involved with for that reason, right? As long as the rents are reasonable and you're going to keep it full. And today, with cap rates being as compressed as they are, I think you, things are just there are a lot more. There's a lot more to look at today and drill down in as a result of that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's part of the tricky part, um, is really being able to predict that. And, I think when we're talking about exit strategy, that's one thing that you can really nail. That's one thing, that's one variable that you can freeze, one variable that you control is deciding, right, and getting guidance on what is a good exit strategy for you, maybe for your family, if you have a family, depending on how old you are, right, where you are in your investing career, um, what your objectives are, from a financial standpoint. How much time and energy do you have? Some people on this call might be just passive investors. And that has a different strategy potentially than somebody that's going to be more of a elbow grease and sweat equity, or a really active property manager where they're going to be doing work and rehab and all that kind of stuff. So, really understanding that, because those are the variables that you can freeze. Those are the variables that you can solidify, and then some of those other variables, that are uh, um, not fixed, you know, that then you can focus on those. My point is, you know, when you're really concrete and you know what, you know, what it is that you want, and you pick a strategy and you say, this is the strategy that I'm going with, then that's one less ball that's up in the air, or one less plate that's spinning, because you're going to find other balls up in the air, other plates spinning. um, and again, that's why, you know, nobody talks about this, Mike. This is, you know, for every seminar I've been to, for every person I've talked to, you know, very few people out there talk about exit strategy, about how important it is. And I think it's one of the most important things that you want to nail down before you start your investing, because if you don't have that figured out, you're just going to be all over the map.
Yeah. And it really starts with some things like, first of all, building a good team and having a good network around you. We kind of talked about that earlier on the call, that's one of those strategies you could really redevelop today, sitting in front of your computer or on your iPhone, right? You can build a good network and build a solid network by reaching out and communicating with people today. The next part is develop a good buying strategy. Know what you're buying, because if you know what you're going to buy, you can know how you're going to get out of it. Because I'll give you an example, right? So part of my buying strategy was I would never buy a property that was less than 60 to 65% two bedrooms or more. So if there were more one bedrooms and studios, I wouldn't do it. Here's what I say though: be flexible on your strategies, be flexible on the things that you set. Because I looked at a deal one time that was in Dallas, in a submarket in Dallas, that it was 700 and some units, but uh, it was 60% one bedrooms. And I said, no, we can't do it. But the broker said to me, he goes, no, look, pay attention to this, because, and here's what he said: pay attention to this, because in this market, it's very transient, and one bedrooms get more square footage dollar amount than the two bedrooms do. And it turns over a lot easier. So we did the research on that, and he was right. We didn't buy the deal, but he was right because of that. So I say, build a buying strategy, know what you want, because that's what's going to help you sell when you get out, or refinance, or however you're going to exercise a strategy, but be flexible on it too. So,
Yeah,
hey,
no, I think that's good advice. Yeah, yes, you do want to be flexible for sure.
one thing I want to say, you made a comment earlier, oh, I didn't own anything as big as you, 28, 30 units. But you know what? Those are good sized buildings. And you can build a heck of a portfolio with 10, 20, 15 unit buildings, right? So you don't have to own big monster buildings. Find your sweet spot and work in your sweet spot. That could be a portfolio of 20 unit deals.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just for my own personal story, we got to a point, Mike, where we had 13 buildings, and we got to a crossroads, and we were at the point where we were going to grow. We wanted to increase our property management, our financing. We were in a pretty good position, and we just, for personal reasons, my partners and I decided we weren't going to go that route, because then we were going to start to, we were going to graduate up to start to buy the 50s, the 80s, the hundreds, the kind of the realm that you were in. That was our next step. And we all sat down and we looked at our strategy. And you got to remember, I had partners, I had people that were trust fund that had trust funds. We had people that were doctors and dentists. They had a different strategy for why they were investing. We had a law firm. We had a couple of guys that owned a moving company out in New Jersey. So there were, we had different partners, and we sat down because we got to a point after about, I want to say about 7 or 8 years, we got to a point and we said, okay, this is our, now what's our strategy, right? So our strategy up to that point was X, and we executed on that. And then we were at a point where we were going to go to that next level, and we all kind of decided it's not going to work out for everybody. So, yes, be flexible, 100%. I totally agree with you. Have some flexibility in your plan. Also, look for those points where you're going to transition, right? You're going to, or not, you may put yourself in a position to start buying bigger units, right? Or you might say, you know what, we don't want to do that. We want to continue. We've really got a level of expertise in managing these 6 and 8 unit buildings or whatever they might be. So let's just continue, buying these 6 or 8 buildings. Or you might say, you know what, right now we've got, our cup is full. We own 4 or 5 buildings and it's going well and they're cash flowing and, it fits into my personal goals, and you might just maintain that, so yes, I totally agree with you. Having an exit strategy at the beginning and also baking in or looking for uh, points in time in the future where you can reevaluate and say, is this working as well as we wanted to, or is it now time to maybe upshift and shift gears into a higher gear? So I think that's a very important point that you make.
Hey, when I started buying multifamily, I never thought that I would buy a 200 unit deal. And then, when I remember walking out of a closing on the first 187 unit deal I bought, right? Going, holy cow, I can't believe I just did that. So it's funny how that comes around. So yeah, listen, if you're doing 2 unit, 4 unit buildings right now on the residential side and you're building a portfolio, that's a great place to stay. That's a great place to build long-term wealth. If you're looking to graduate from there and go on the commercial side and start to really build a little bit bigger buildings here, it comes down to economies of scale, right? You can do a lot more with the power of more. So, um, the more units you have under control, the more cash flow you have, and the easier it is to realize cash flow and get stay on top of it. So
Yeah. And I also want to bring up a point. I had a conversation with a friend of mine the other day. They own a 14 unit building and they want to, and it's doing very well. They live in Chicago and I think the property is in, I want to say St. Louis or somewhere. And I think they have a family member managing it and it's working out really well. And they're having success. And I reminded this person, I'm saying, listen, don't underestimate or don't downplay that. I said, you're already an investor. You've already had success in multifamily. A 14 unit building is a great building. I mean, that's a nice, it's not a huge building, but it's not a small building either. It's a good sized building. I said, be sure that when you're out there networking with people that accentuate that and let them know, yeah, hey, I've got this 14 unit building. We've owned it for so long. It's doing really well. And I want to start to build my portfolio. And don't be shy about that. If you've got some success in single family homes, or you may own a couple of 2 flats or whatever, you know take a step back every now and then and remind yourself that you're doing okay, that you're in the game. And that's a big thing. And nobody's going to know that unless you tell them. And I'm not a big proponent of blowing your own horn, but that's really not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about just being real and sharing what experiences you have, because people are going to respect that, and they're also potentially going to be able to help you and say, wow, that's really great, how can I help you grow, or what do you need to go to the next level. And my point is, don't forget your successes, because even those little successes are valuable, and they teach you lessons along the way. And like you said, Mike, you know I've been there. I mean, I think when we bought that 28 unit building, I was kind of like, wow, okay, cool. We just bought the moment was when I was on the elevator and I had the bag of keys. You know what I mean? The guy handed me a bag of keys and it weighed like 10 pounds. And I'm like, wow, we got a lot of keys here. This is a real building, And so you don't forget those moments, right? Where you kind of go, wow, I just really pulled that off, and now I'm in the game, And so for wherever you are in your investing career or your investing life cycle, relish it. You know what I mean? If you've had successes, don't be shy about telling people that, because in the appropriate environment or scenario, that can make a difference. And they'll say, well, yeah, that's great. I look for people like you because you do have some experience, and let's go to the next level.
yeah, we all learn from each other, don't we? So
Yeah.
hey, it's about that time.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it flies, doesn't it? No, these are good conversations. I really enjoyed it. Looks like we got a good group. So yeah, so keep me posted, Mike, about that. What'd you say, December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day, huh?
No, it's cash flow day.
Oh. Yeah.
You're right. You're right. It is Pearl Harbor Day. Hey, so should we try and get a guest next week?
I think Ashley, I'm going to try to get Ashley, our title person, because
Okay.
she sponsored the Multifamily Global Summit. So I'll reach out to Ashley and see if she's available.
Okay.
But yeah, it's always good to bring someone on. So why don't we do that? Why don't we think about bringing somebody on?
Yeah. Well, you find out from her if she's not available. I have a couple ideas, so
Okay.
figure something out. But
Yeah.
hey, so I just want everybody to remember. Listen, follow us on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Like us on YouTube. Go to the YouTube channel. There's a plethora of information. All the old, every multifamily unplugged that Carl and I have done is out there. And so there's a lot of resources. If you're a new investor and you're trying to learn, and you need help, don't hesitate to give me a call, give Carl a call, uh, visit the website. A lot of
What's
resources.
what's the YouTube channel? Just throw a shout out there. What's the YouTube channel?
mycoreintentions.com.
Yeah. Okay.
So, um, and at mycoreintentions.com, they can get some old podcasts and this show also. So,
Awesome. Well, Mike, enjoy the rest of your day. I don't know what you're doing. Are you doing anything exciting?
hey, it's Thanksgiving this week. I just want to wish everybody happy Thanksgiving. And one thing I always say about Thanksgiving, and I try to teach my kids this, is that hey, Thanksgiving's a great day to be thankful, but we should be thankful every day. And I think gratitude is something that really helps us move the ball forward, because the more we can be grateful for stuff, the easier it is for us to love life and to live life, right? So I think it's about being grateful and giving back. And so, hey, I'm thankful for our friendship and for the chance of being able to do this, and for the people that tune in. So we had a great crowd this morning, so that was nice.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And Mike, I know you and I will talk between now and then, but yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Gratitude is a great attitude to have. So
Yeah. All right. Have a great weekend. Have a great weekend, everybody. Remember, meet up on Monday night, and we'll be here next Saturday morning again. Tell your friends about us. We'll talk to you soon.
see you later, Mike.
Bye, Carl.